driven by two different organizations, the Democratic Party of Oregon and a climate organization in Eastern Oregon called Climate Vigil. We decided to come together and form this coalition. Mel is on the strategy team for OCERA, and she's here to tell us more about it. Thank you.
It's a true honor to be here, and I appreciate this time I have with you. Awesome. So Daniel did my job for me in this first quick exercise of dreaming big. You know, I think we're all visionaries here. We all want to change the future that the scientists have described to us. We've all had our own, oh no, I have to do something moment. You know, it's not an aha moment, it's not a coming to Jesus moment, it's a, oh no, I have to do something. And that's probably why you're part of this organization, why you're here tonight to listen and learn and see what, you know, how you can plug in. And this is a beautiful opportunity I'm very honored to share with you regarding how you can make your dreams come true. So part of this is thinking big, like what if, you know, our world, ... you describe the world you want to live in, the world that you want your children, your grandchildren, future generations to live in. And I know y'all have been talking about it, so someone speak up with one example, please. I'll wait. Say again? Yes. What kind of world?
We talked about clean water.
Clean water?
We want to guarantee abundant and clean water.
Abundant, clean water, absolutely. And I'm just going to go down the levels here. What do we want our country to be like in the vein of a healthy environment? What kind of country do we want to leave our kids?
Fuels.
To transition away from ending fossil fuel-based energy systems, yes. That's a very important one. Our state. Who has a dream for Oregon?
Clean air.
Clean air, absolutely. Big issues. Our community, probably your community here. What do y'all want from it?
Above. All of the above.
All the above. Great. And this one is really kind of a reflection point of what dreams do I have for myself in the big picture here. And I want you to kind of like wrap that up, put a bow on it, and save it for the end of the presentation. So we're going to start with constitutional power, what it's about, why we're aiming for the Constitution. The bottom line is it's our social compact, our social contract, whatever you want to call it. It's our agreement with the government, all levels of government, right? We promise to pay our taxes and follow the law if, or as long as, right? Mm-hmm. It's in all our source documents of being a country, being a state. It's some are written better than others, but that's the basic gist of what a constitution is all about. And nicely, it is the most powerful legal instrument there is as well. So when you're talking about laws, you're talking about regulations and statutes and case law and politics and all the above there, what we think of as the government, the Constitution supersedes all of that. Not sure what I should do. But, and some people don't realize that when I talk, oh, by the way, I also help run a campaign in Florida. That's where I was just from. And there's a statewide initiative for the right to clean water there. And a lot of folks don't realize that they have the power to change the Florida Constitution to fit the priorities of the people. And so it's a shame, but yeah, it's an important piece to this entire pie that we do have the power to change our destiny, to determine our future for our children and future generations. So that, I just wanted to start off with that. This is why we're here. So how many people knew that Oregon had the worst waters in the nation? That was a surprise to me when I learned of it. 120,000 miles polluted rivers and streams, the most in the nation. 80% of the waterways are or threaten aquatic life, the most in the nation. And over 95% of Oregon's lakes are polluted, worst in the nation. That's not what the brochure said. So what happened and why? Oregon is known as the green state, is known as progressive policies and getting the right thing done for the people's interest, for the public interest. And they're not afraid to lean into that. So how did we get here? The basic problem is that the environment has been the object of politics. And unfortunately, who rules politics oftentimes? Some of the campaign finance laws, et cetera, we won't get into that, but let's just say there's an inappropriate amount of influence, unfortunately. And I'm not, again, everyone's doing their best, whatever position they have, responsibility as a politician, people in the agencies, they're good people, but the system itself is broken, it's upside down. So, if you wanted to look that up, that's the Environmental Integrity Project report released a couple years ago and reported in the Oregon Capital Capsule, sorry about that, Oregon Capital Chronicle. So the state government has the authority and the duty to protect us, to protect the environment for us. All right, that's basic, everyone knows that or understands it at some level, but what does that exactly mean? Well, sorry for the eye chart. I'll just explain it to you. The traditional legal system is, politics has control. That's the basic gist of this. What it does say is the U.S. Constitution gives power, the police powers, to states through the 10th Amendment. So the state has the police powers to protect and promote the health, safety, and well-being of the people of Oregon. Okay? Outside of that, the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution also enables attenuated way for environmental protection through the interstate commerce approach. That's why it's a little limited. That's why things have to be navigable and have to do with commerce. That's why it's a little disjointed. But every state has the ability to go above and beyond. Sorry. The duty is outlined by the laws that are passed, whether it's federal or state, statutes, regulations, case law, and of course the public trust doctrine is interwoven, sometimes codified, sometimes it's just pure case law, depending on the state. But the basic gist is the public trust doctrine says the government has a duty to protect natural resources for the benefit of all. That stems back from Justinian times. So it's not new, but it's important. And when we feel this, when we feel the government's not doing their duty or otherwise violating their own law, we have certain rights to challenge them on it through citizens' cause of action type of things, but that's very limited and obviously it's not working very well. So what are we doing today? We're talking about the rights-based approach based on our constitutional unenumerated right to a healthy environment. So it's not yet enumerated, it's not yet in there, but we can put it in there. And the importance of express versus implied is yes, a healthy environment is definitely necessary, a critical element of the ability to live your life, to enjoy your liberty interests, to do everything the Constitution tells you that we can do, right? You need to drink water, you need to breathe air, you need to not be susceptible to extreme heat or etc. So all of that is kind of implied, but we are still waiting for the big case law to drop that's going to survive the U.S. Supreme Court that says, yes, it's implied. So instead of waiting, let's just do it ourselves, okay? So we need something in the Oregon Constitution that triggers what's called strict scrutiny. And apologies, It's a little legal heavy because it's a legal issue. It's a legal tool, and it's wonderful if everyone could get underneath and understand it and also advocate for it once you're on board. Because this is important stuff. Strict scrutiny is a different level of the courts looking at other branches' activities, right? You have the separation of powers issue, checks and balances, and generally everyone stays in their own lane, okay? So currently, the current law is the courts are very hesitant to second guess what the agency says is fine. It's healthy, the harm is not that great, everyone will get over it, or nature and time will take its course, don't worry about it. So if and when the science says differently, there's not much the courts can or should do outside of egregious, very ugly circumstances, okay? So that's the current status. What we want is strict scrutiny. Strict scrutiny is part of a fundamental right, much like the First Amendment rights that are so special, so part of our identity and our brand as Americans that we, expect our courts to second guess. And again, basic human survival needs probably count. Okay, so we're asking for strict scrutiny to be triggered so the courts will second guess the legislature and or the executive branch when it's necessary. Okay, and the court generally has the ability to fix things. It's not, when you hear lawsuit, everyone thinks lawyers, and someone's going to get rich, nothing's going to get done, right? As a lawyer, I can tell you that that's somewhat true. However, when we're talking about this, or most civil rights types of actions, we're talking about equitable remedies, not monetary damages. Okay, it's different. Equitable remedies includes your injunctive relief, your injunction, meaning, hey, court, please tell that agency to stop doing that, or don't allow that permit, or on the flip side, they have to do their job as written or as they should. So there's a stop and a must go aspect to injunctive relief. Okay, very powerful stuff. You can also have declaratory relief, which is a very simple, yes, this violates the Constitution. Fix it. So that's less powerful than injunctive relief, but these are matters of the court fixing the problem, not making anyone rich, not bankrupting anyone, but just identifying actions or inactions of the government and whatever they're doing or whatever the plaintiff is able to bring to the case of the evidence, showing a violation. Plaintiff just wants it to be fixed. And the fix is a public interest fix. It doesn't serve anyone personally. There's no personal injury or property damage or anything like that. That's at stake here. That's for other law. But this is different. This is completely and purely fix it, which is nice. You don't see that very often, but this is what it is. So different aspects of criteria for these types of amendments are important to go over because many states already have environmental rights amendments in place in their state constitutions. However, they don't all have these criteria in place, so they're not as effective, they're not useful, they don't do the job. The courts can't fix things. So what we needed to say or do is, one, the fundamental value triggers strict scrutiny, like I just talked about. It also has to be enforceable by anyone, by the people that it was designed to protect their interests, our interests. Oftentimes in constitutional provisions, you'll see very flowery, wonderful words without any enforcement capability, or it expressly says, and the legislature has it for action. Which is good if you really love and trust your legislature. I can tell you, in Florida, we don't. But that's one of the big ticket items of an effective amendment, is that we have to be able to bring it to court when we are able to show a violation of our right. And by the way, most agencies, most entities, most corporations, most everyone, they don't care unless they can be sued. That's another kind of a basic, unfortunate fact. It also has to be self-executing. And what that means is that it has to be clear enough and direct enough that it's ready on day one, and there's no waiting around for the legislature to implement additional processes or standards or definitions for it to come into effect. That too is a big deal in some states, more than others. And it has to survive all of the legal challenges that any opposing interest could possibly throw at it. And it has to, first of all, survive the ballot title review of the Citizens Initiative process. And after it's enacted, when attorneys are using it or defending it, or governments are, not defending it or whatever, that is something that is also important, that every word is understood clearly, and there's no question of how it's going to apply. Okay? So that's our job as OCERA, to ensure that we make it happen. So from this slide on, I'm going to talk about OCERA, and I ask, as a fellow member of this coalition, that you just kind of keep it amongst coalition members. Talk amongst yourselves freely, but sorry, reporters, off the record. So as you may have heard, OCERA began last year, late last year, when we started realizing that other people had the same idea, the same exact idea. Montana, Hellevue, Montana kind of helped to stir things up. I was brought in. I was actually not part of DPO or the Climate Vigil. I was asked to connect with Linda of DPO, and because of my work in Florida. So we all kind of converged and realized we have to do this. We're going to do this. It can happen. So that's the quick origin story of how this all came together. And of course, you may have known, the May 4th was our initial organizing meeting to meet fellow like minds and like hearts and advocates that also believe, okay, we have to do something, and this is an effective way of going forward. So currently, we have a strategy team of 9 people, and you have so many different backgrounds and expertise all around here. You may or may not recognize names, but for instance, Linda, who is the person that I connected with, she had a career with NASA. She worked on life support systems, and she connected those dots. Earth needs a life support system that we need to protect at all costs. Okay? We need to worry about that more than off-world life support systems, first and foremost. So that's what kind of drew her in. Peter Fargo is the Climate Vigil person from Baker City, who has been very vigilant in connecting a lot of communities of faith together, climate-based organizations, and his moment of I have to do something came from just his kids. He looked at his kids one day and just realized. He has a background in PR, worked for EPA and a couple other agencies, so he knows what he's doing. We put him in place of PR, in charge of that. So, and I'm sure you'll meet everyone eventually, but these are some of the names that you'll see from the strategy team. So we are currently forming more teams. One of them being the steering committee to pretty much house our leadership word line. No, the folks that the frontline folks, the stakeholders that really should be in charge of things. We created a space and have been recruiting since we got together in January, asking for folks to come forward and hey. Please check this out. We're doing it for you. We're going to continue working, but we're asking for your leadership for you to step in, because this is your everything. This is your future. So that's where we are right now. We're starting to build it out, but again, please, if you know of anyone or if you are interested, please tell me afterwards or email me. Lobbying and operations and petitioning operations are going to be part of what the strategy team will probably turn into pretty soon. The communications team, lots to go on, lots to do there. Fundraising team, of course, that has to be on the front burner, because this is a campaign and you need money to make things happen, unfortunately. But it's not as bad here as it is in other states, so that's good. And the legal team. So I'm currently facilitating the legal collaboration in the drafting phase, and I can get into that if you would like to talk more about it, or any of these team capacities, what they're doing, their goals, objectives, processes, as they're being formed right now. Still early, but happy to talk about it. And if you wanted to, there are buttons, there are links to these slides if you wanted to push them out. With hyperlinks to various forums and things like that. Okay, it's a little too much to read, sorry. But I wanted to provide for your reading later the timeline that we have basically in place. We have, of course, the mission is to collaborate on, draft, and qualify a fundamental right to a healthy environment for the 2026 ballot. That's our aim. Means versus end, the point is how we do it is just important as doing it. That goes back to the fact that we need to ensure our leaders are appropriately, actually, genuinely, authentically leading us. Not just, there's no tokenism, there's no, undermining or greenwashing anything. This is the real deal, and it needs to stay like that. So, and of course.
May I have your attention, please?
Yes.
The library closes in 28 minutes.
Thank you.
Restrooms close in 13 minutes.
Uh-oh.
Light blocks will be removed in 13 minutes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'll continue. All right, so we also have a dual effort strategy where we're not only going to ask the legislature to please put this on the ballot, we're also going to engage a citizens initiative petitioning drive type of effort as well. Not just in case, but also to leverage our lobbying effort to ensure that they don't, they don't succumb to perhaps opposing voices that want them to change and either dilute or undermine the effects of this, what we need it to do, okay, which can happen in staffing. But so having this at the ready is going to help leverage that whole thing. So that's the strategy. Of course, you have, May and June. Right now, we're inviting input from stakeholders, especially our frontline communities. We are also starting to do a lot of legal research to ensure that our basic skeleton of things is up to par with Oregon law, not just, looking at other states, how they did it. And, unfortunately, other states, they're not fully tested either. So we really have to start from square one and understand Oregon's making sure that law is good in Oregon. That's pretty much it. So, and then the idea is to hopefully finalize language in August and file. And also file, or have our co-sponsors file in the legislature. Or whatever timing they have, not sure yet. So we'll be working on the legislature through the legislative session. Hopefully that'll end up being completely successful. We can all go home and not worry about, funding $1.5 million campaign. And or we can, just go home and rest for a little bit, because the next phase will be the yes campaign, making sure that the voters understand what this is, making sure that the opposing misinformation campaign is addressed and met at every turn. So there's plenty of work to do between now and November of 2026 in various capacities and as time goes on. So the ways that organizations can help out number greatly, but the basic gist is that there's an opportunity here for there to be creative license. Right? There's a time to talk amongst yourselves as an organization. What should we do? What can we do? We can lead, or we can help someone else lead, or organize, or like I said, there's plenty of work to be done. Endorsement, and thank you, SOCAN, for the endorsement. It helped, especially in the beginning stages of this, to build the momentum that we needed to continue the awareness and coalition building. So that was beautiful, thank you. Another level of support includes communication support to ensure that the organization is providing routine updates to the members or followers, whatever platforms you might be on, social media, email, and things like that. Level 3 support is tangible support. Helping out with organizing volunteers, training them perhaps, or any number of things. And if you're interested in having more discussion along those lines, happy to talk about that as well. So on an individual basis, there's plenty to do as individual volunteers. First, and this goes with organizations as well, but join OCERA just to start receiving updates from OCERA, what's going on, what opportunities are currently available, what needs, what priorities the coalition has right now, so people can jump in when they can, and when they feel that I can contribute something right now. So that's the purpose of that. We understand that volunteers have lives, and waxing and waning life obligations and things like that. So we don't expect you to, as soon as you sign up, report in for duty and stay in duty until November 2026. Okay, we just want you to be connected to us and ensure that you receive the information and hop on, hop in, sync up whenever you feel the call. So, and then the next level is, if any of these teams resonate with you, then, find one of us and talk about it, or just go ahead and on our website, there's a join a team button there as well, or this is actually a hot link for that too. Any one of the teams that we just went over a couple slides ago. You can also put your feedback in, your insights as a stakeholder as to how you would like this amendment to work, important aspects and considerations you need us to account for and incorporate in our process, in our drafting process. And similarly, if you are a legal expert or something along those lines where you can provide assistance, either researching, analyzing, anything like that, please talk to me. Of course, word of mouth is powerful when we're raising awareness. Talking with your friends and family, folks at in your faith communities or in your circles, your clubs, your organizations, neighbors, all the above. Make sure your sphere of influence at least knows about this and has a way to click in as well, if they wish. And that goes right into helping build the coalition, where you're in your word of mouth, raising awareness. You also are trying to raise support. People can, like I said, individuals or organizations, they can link in however they wish, whenever they wish. But there's an on-ramp for them. And of course, petitioning and lobbying, when that starts rolling out, we'll need help. Individually, you can help, for instance, coordinate volunteers. You can help train volunteers. You can help create an acknowledgement or appreciation program for volunteers. All of these things are critical components of an overall campaign. You can host a fundraiser. You can ask a business to host an informational event. You can be as creative as you want, but all of it directly helps. Fundraise, donate. So I just wanted to go over 5 quick talking points for us to be comfortable with and be familiar with. So super small, sorry. Every person has a fundamental right to a healthy environment, vital to our health, safety, and well-being. This is like just getting to the core of things. This is an all of us issue. Okay, with special focus on the frontline stakeholders who suffer the first and the worst effects of polluted water, polluted air, and climate change. Oregon, home of the worst waters in the nation, needs this constitutional amendment to clarify and legally enforce our priority needs. It's a legal tool to fix things. And this is about government accountability. It's about justice. It's about fairness, equity. And finally, OCERA is a coalition of people and organizations from different regions of the state, coming from different backgrounds with different politics and beliefs, united as family to effectively protect the shared interests of current and future generations in a healthy environment. So that's me in a nutshell, and OCERA in a nutshell, and I'm happy to answer questions. I know I wanted to leave as much time for Q&A as possible because there's a lot that I could get into, but I wanted to see what you all were interested in talking about. So I will hand it over to Daniel.
Mic swap.
Yes.
Thank you. Because all this comes down to air, water, fire, and what's the third one? Earth, plastics, pollution, all these things. I wonder where the medical community comes into this. I mean, I'm sitting here shocked because my daughter took her kids up to Fish Lake and 95% of the lakes are polluted. As a grandmother, I'm just like, I'm scared.
Yeah.
And where do the doctors or the medical professionals come in? They should be backing this 100%.
Absolutely, and we are already underway. Can you hear me okay? We are underway connecting with the health professionals and the organizations and the scientists and those communities of experts are definitely directly aligning with this mission. And yes, it is very disturbing when you look at a report like that by a credible source. And so that chills our ability to enjoy our liberties, our traditional, our cultural expectations of taking the family out camping to fish in that lake or that fishing hole or swim in that, whatever. It's shaky.
Well, you're working against that perception too that Oregon is so clean and green and yada yada, and that's not true.
Apparently.
Well, but where's the public knowledge? And I think that's where I always see with all the projects I work with, we need investigative journalists to start really pumping that stuff into the papers.
Yes.
And I used to have a few, but now I don't really have who those people are, but those professionals, they need to be engaged because they get the word out.
I hope that once they catch wind, that the spark, the fire catches and it continues out, because this is definitely a moment of reckoning, of import, of why we are here, why people choose professions. It's not to just, have a stable income and eat and sleep. It's to make the world a better place for many, many people. So, let's sound the alarm, sound the horn, whatever you want to do, but when people hear the call, the good people will answer. And I'm assuming, and I presume, the health professionals will be right there in line. Thank you.
I was surprised to see the reference at the beginning about the polluted waters, because I remember hearing Grandma Aggie speak a number of years ago. Is there anyone who does not know Grandma Aggie of blessed memory? We all do, okay. She spoke with such joy and tears in her eyes when she said, It was the first time in her life that all the rivers had salmon. All of them. So when you say we have the worst water in the country, the most polluted, it doesn't connect.
Right.
There's something in that definition of pollution that doesn't fit with what Grandma Aggie was telling us. And I would be interested to see what was considered pollution and what caused that pollution. And if whatever caused it was something that we ourselves could prevent. Because my heart goes to Grandma Aggie. I trust her implicitly, and I would believe what she told me. And in conjunction with that, my strong inclination is to think that our problems with the water and the environment is not mostly in Oregon. We do a pretty good job here. Our legislature is very pro-protection. They don't always have the money to do what they want, but I think that they're pretty good at it. Our biggest issue is not with Oregon legislature, but with the federal government. And that came into very sharp focus during the big debate over the oil line coming through. Every agency in Oregon said no. The federal government said yes. And they have the power to override us. And I don't see how this constitutional amendment would stop the federal government from overriding things that are really detrimental to our environment here.
Well, what's nice, the legal answer to the second question is that the federal government, in the courts, they ensure that the federal government respect state law. That's in the interpretation and application of state law, and especially if it's state constitutional law. So if it's federal regulation versus state regulation, depending on how the lines of authority stem from the laws you're talking about, I'm sorry, I put myself to sleep just now. But the federal government is able to supersede certain issues at certain times. But there is a legal principle that says otherwise. So I don't know how they did that or what lawyers or firms fought against it under what theories or arguments, but I can tell you that's a basic legal principle that the federal law, federal agencies, et cetera, have to respect state law. Yeah, oh. May I just really quick, just to touch on the first one. I totally respect the concern and the consternation about this report. I can only tell you that it was reported and what was reported. I did read it, but I didn't look for the points that you brought up, like the pollution standards that I read in the report, and this was a few months ago, seemed up and up to me. But again, I haven't dug in further or further questioned it with that type of eye. So definitely look, I'll look into it, everyone should look into it, and there is definitely no room for alarmism, especially if we're just, trying to use it for whatever gains or whatever. But overall, this is definitely a valid legal tool to help with everything else that's going on. It's not the end-all be-all. It's not the silver bullet, I guess is what you could call it. But it does do a lot in the vein of helping the government and the government employees and the staff and the agencies. They're good people trying to do good jobs, but sometimes there's a word from above. Political positions trickle down in how to interpret things or how to enforce or whether to enforce and things like that. And I just, we have a member on our strategy team that I just got that information from. And it was a guess, and I know that's true for Florida too, but in Oregon, this person was, worked his career within agencies, environmental agencies, had first eyewitness this issue of good people getting overwhelmed by the political interests telling them what to do and what not to do. That doesn't always match with science or the but the public interest. So that's a real thing. I don't know how prevalent it is, but from this person's anecdotal perspective, it was very true. So yes, there's a lot of good work done by a lot of good people, and the federal government, the system is there, and Oregon's one of the better states for getting things done, especially climate-wise. But this couldn't hurt. It couldn't hurt, and it very well could be the necessary safety net that we need in case we need it, or when we need it. Sorry to interrupt the next question.
It's okay. Being a little old, sometimes I forget. But I wanted to ask you this question. A few years ago, our Republican senators or legislators walked out of our legislature due to one of the issues was the environment. So if you can't get anywhere with the legislatures, let's say, are you planning to take this to the public as a ballot measure?
Yes. Yes, we are. And we're going to be starting that about the same time.
Because that's very expensive.
Yes, it can be, yes. That's why we love volunteers, because it knocks down the price tenfold. Anyone else want to talk about anything?
Are there already in place tools like press kits and that sort of information? And when do you want that to be launched?
We want that to be ready when we file in August. So a lot of things are still forming. We're still forming teams, and we're hoping that experts on these teams are helpful in that aspect. And we do already have lots of folks that are experienced and they know how to best develop these types of tools for press kits, like you said, and other things like a fundraising plan, a budgeting plan, the Gantt chart of operations. All that stuff. It's pretty complex almost immediately. We have and we are continuing to recruit the duty experts to this team that can make this happen, and no one's collecting a salary.
So what do you want us to do between now and August? What you said, some of this is not public information yet. What can we talk about? What can we do? We belong to other organizations. Can they be involved? Just what do you want to happen there?
Great questions. Regarding the information, very quickly, I would say a general rule is, so when you're using your best judgment, if what you're sharing with someone that is in the public audience, the public realm, right? Information that could be used, it's almost like presuming they have bad motives, okay? So presuming they can use the information that you give them and take it and give it to the right machine, well-resourced machine, to start the counter-narrative campaign, misinformation campaign, and things like that. That type of information, just try to keep close hold. And it's one of those, you'll see it when you come across it type of standards. But otherwise, the communications team is about to come out with not just talking points, but these types of informational guidelines for coalition members to help with this particular point. So between now and August, there's lots to be done. Like I said, if anyone wants to help with jumping on a team, any of those capacities, if you would like to join the legal team, we're full steam ahead right now with lots of research and analysis. If you want to join the communications team, we're still building out the coalition. You can help, put your name next to a potential contact and develop a relationship with that organization, representative, or whatnot. So build a coalition. You can start helping us build the database that we're going to be using for our outreach to legislators. There are plenty of things to do with petitioning. So people that are well versed in volunteer organization coordination for petition drives, please step forward. We're going to have you help train other volunteers. You know, things like that will happen, especially in July and the beginning of August, getting ready for our first 2,000 petitions we need once we file to trigger the ballot title review. So all of that is, you know, there's plenty to do. It's really, you know, you can do something as an organization or individually, or both. Totally up to you.
So I thought I saw that you have monthly meetings, is that right?
Yes.
And are those virtual? Are your monthly meetings virtual?
Yes, on our third Tuesday
Uh-huh.
at 12.
And
It's
is the
Zoom.
public welcome to join?
Well, they're welcome to join OCERA as far as an update, receiving the updates. There's no background check, so yes, someone with bad motives could very well come in and listen in. But that's the risk we have to take if we want to continue building up the momentum. It's one of those philosophical campaign decisions of living in fear or just pushing forward with the solid truth that you have, you know, and run with it. So that's where we are.
Okay. So is that a yes answer or no?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's you know, public's invited,
Okay.
and we're hoping that they're good people.
Okay.
Just join them.
Yeah, I did.
How
does this match with the rights of nature movements?
Sure, it's a great question. When you see environmental rights, sometimes in people's, you know, there's a connotation to rights of nature because it's been in the news in the UN, and you know, lots of folks are familiar with it, which is good. That is not what this is. What this is actually, arguably, and some, okay, without the drama, this arguably helps protect the environmental, like ecosystems, with greater legal protections than would a rights of nature approach. And that's because rights of nature doesn't necessarily trigger the strict scrutiny that we're talking about. So that's why I used to be in rights of nature, and when I realized that I could consider out-of-the-box thinking, you know, oh, the system itself is red. Let's take a look at the system. And rights of nature was right there on my, you know, first on my radar. So I got into it, but then I realized what I just said, that, you know, it pretty much puts the rights of nature the same level as rights of polluters.
Okay.
So they get considered, but it's more of an educational feature. It's more of a philosophical approach than it is a legal tool for better protection. And I hate saying that because I know folks in the rights of nature world, and it's, I think we'll eventually get there. But the U.S. Western law system is not yet ready for it. Good question.
Yeah, so how does the Children's Trust and the Montana lawsuit play into this in terms of its background, and how did it influence the start of this, and are there any common players that came out of that and into this?
Yes. So, you know, Peter from Baker City, Climate Vigil, he and Climate Vigil and another multi-state organization had been working with our Children's Trust on developing and drafting this very thing. So that occurred between like most of last year's summer, fall timeframe. And so our Children's Trust has been involved, but and then the Climate Vigil and our group had met, connected. So we continued the conversation with our Children's Trust. And so we are, so they're connected at the hip. We are working with them. They're just very, very busy, so busy. But they are already, you know, lead partners. They told us in the very beginning, yes, we'll be your lead partner on this, because it's exactly what they need to push cases through successfully. And so I actually have an appointment with Matt Dos Santos on Friday to have a big discussion meeting to discuss some of the boring legal stuff behind it. But it is, they are crucial to this whole thing because both of their experience in the law and their needs to have successful cases. So we're definitely listening intently to their recommendations.
Could you fast forward 5 years and tell us how this can be effectively addressed, an issue in a 25-mile range of river or specific lake, to effectively the functional, how it's approached?
Sure. And what's nice is that the examples are primarily not litigation required. There is once the agency attorneys, once the government understands that it is clear, there's no wiggle room, and the lines and the prohibitions and things like that are abundantly obvious to everyone, then there will be internal corrections made where necessary to reduce or eliminate the liability they would be exposed to under, for full compliance. So part of this is addressing also the transition to full compliance, right? We have to give the government a break to an extent because of space-time. And so we have to ensure that the transition is noted to be timely and equitably done, just. So that may or may not appear in the language itself, depending on the case law, where, whether or not we need it. But 5 years from now, a community can learn of a permit, for instance, a development that would clear cut an important forested area that helps to filter water that feeds into an important river, etc. So that's a bad permit, right? And whether or not the agency has approved it or is about to, that's like the nice thing about injunctions. You can like rescind it or make something happen. If it's a bad permit and the public knows about it and the government knows about it, maybe the government just forgot this duty, or on someone's watch they didn't realize they had to do this or that. Otherwise, instead of taking them to court, the public can simply send them an email. Here's some evidence, here's the science that would probably go into a theoretical case. You might want to have your attorneys take a look at that. It seems to be violating our constitutional right. So it's like an FYI campaign where you're benefits out, hey, you may not have known, but this is probably going to be an issue. So let us know what you're going to do, and so we can, start fundraising for an attorney or whatever. And that's how something like that would happen. The government should be able to correct course as necessary already. It's just really those outliers or the rogues that don't want to or don't remember their duty or whatever that can be corrected into place by either an FYI or a lawsuit.
Thank you. I think this is a really important amendment, and I definitely am on board to help get it passed. I'm going to give 2 suggestions for the strategy committee.
Yes.
First, your opposition is already working on this. They're lying in the tall grass waiting for their moment. We've seen it too many times over the past. So with that, I would say my suggestion would be, instead of the approach of you'll know when you see it, be careful, have very clear guidelines for your partners.
Right.
This is what we want you to speak of in June, in July, and as we go into August. That way your partners have very clear lines where they stand. They don't have to make judgment calls about, is this an honest actor in this situation or not? Having dealt with a lot of dishonest actors, it's a fun game to play, but not everyone wants to play it.
Right.
So those would be my suggestions with this. And I know that there's always a how much money do we have for our communications, for our PR and that sort of thing. If you're not in that place yet, the finance team needs to get kicked in, because I guarantee the opposition is already a year ahead.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just wonder, Hogan, can you tell us a little bit more about how they are operating, or
What do
how?
they do?
Well, they've got millions and millions of dollars to keep business as usual going. And, you know, just like we saw with Timber Unity, we all know one of the greatest marketing names I've seen in years that's complete, pardon my language, bullshit. The same thing will happen here. Folks will say that they're going to take away your rights by getting this amendment passed.
Well, just, you probably know that Josephine and Jackson managed to ban GMOs. And that campaign was seriously backed by lots of attorneys behind the scenes. So I think that's really an important piece of the strategy is, and maybe I can tell you a few names that might still help.
Yeah, thank
They
you.
were really a huge behind-the-scenes support to counter what Hogan's talking about.
Yes, definitely. And that goes right, I think we're out of time. That goes right into our quick note about philosophy of either living in concern and fear or trying to get the real word out as soon as possible, so people, when they hear the misinformation, they'll be like, wait a second, instead of hearing that for the first time from the misinformation campaign. So that's one of the strategies of trying to get the good word out, the safe words out to as many people as possible, but leave the strategy to in-house.
That's good.
Back
We
to
get a
you.
round of applause for Mel.